So the big policy announcements from Sunak's speech at the Conservative Party conference were that he's going to crack down on kids smoking, he's going to scrap A-levels, and he's going to scrap the Manchester leg of the HS2 project. It's fair to say that ordinary working people don't give a toss about any of that. Working people who are paying the highest tax rates in 70 years. Working people relentlessly battered by rising inflation, whereby a basic family food shop is eye-wateringly, staggeringly expensive. But beyond all that, what people really wanted to know from the Prime Minister is how he's going to fix the utterly broken housing situation in this country. The UK is unequivocally one of the worst places to find housing in the developed world. In 2019, an average of 6 people would phone up to request a viewing of each property that came onto the rental market. Now that number is 25. For every rental property that comes onto the market, 25 people are turning up potentially trying to rent it. This lack of supply and overwhelming demand has huge social and economic implications. It's no surprise we've got a generation of quiet quitters and long-term sick benefit scroungers. Why work yourself to the bone only to come home to a hovel every night? A hovel you might be tossed out of at 6 months' notice. And people who do manage to find somewhere to rent are spending on average 40% of their income on that rent, before we factor in utilities, council tax and everything else. Subsistence living with not a chance of escape. Nobody forced into spending this much money on rent alone is ever going to be able to afford to buy their own home in the current market. And those that by some miracle did manage to get on the property ladder over the past 5 or 10 years are finding themselves having to sell up because of spiralling interest rates on unaffordable mortgages. Is there any more fundamental responsibility for a government than to ensure that hard-working people on a reasonable income are able to access basic housing? And yet the restrictions of house building in this country continue to be so severe that they perpetuate artificial conditions of scarcity. If you live south of Birmingham, you might well be paying £500,000 for a 60-year-old 2-bedroom shack. It's a vile government racket to bolster the interests of long-term property owners who voted them into office at the expense of younger generations who are forced to live in unstable domestic conditions of penury, and the consequences of that greed are disastrous for all of us. I'm doing live stand-up dates in London and Southampton this month. Ticket links beneath this video if you'd like to come along.